Welcome to Bartlett Bible Group. My name is James. Today's Bible study is Elijah being called up into heaven and the two witnesses being called up into heaven. Elijah's story is the foreshadowing event pointing to what's going to happen to the two witnesses who come during the beginning of the tribulation. The two witnesses event is a confirmation event of what happened to the church before the tribulation began. We're going to get started. I'm going to show you the verses that we're going to cover. Please have a pen and paper ready to take these notes down and read the entire chapter after we conclude this Bible study, so you have a richer understanding of the events. There's so much more meaning that we're not going to cover in this particular Bible study, so we always encourage to read the entire chapters of those chapters that we are studying. We're going to get started, and I'm just going to give you some forewarning. I don't read too well out loud, and there is a very slight difference in Elijah and Elisha, and I'm maybe pronouncing that second name completely wrong, so I apologize. We're going to get started in 2 Kings chapter 2. I'm reading now the English Standard Version. Now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way to Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. And the sons of the prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take away your master from over you?" And he said, "Yes, I know it. Keep quiet." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The sons of the prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take away your master from over you?" He answered, "Yes, I know it. Keep quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men of the sons of the prophets also went and stood at some distance from them, as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water, and the water was parted to one side and to the other, till the two of them could go over on dry ground. And when they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask, what shall I do for you before I am taken from you?" And Elisha said, "Please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me." And he said, "You have asked a hard thing. Yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it shall be done for you, but if you do not see me, it shall not be so." And as they still went on and talked, behold, chariots of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha said, and Elisha saw it, and he cried, Father, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen. And he saw him no more. Elijah was a prophet of the Lord, and he was a faithful man, going wherever the Lord had taken him or had led him to go. And because of his faith, God chose to take him bodily into heaven without seeing death. Elisha, who was Elijah's disciple, he followed after Elijah, learning from him, desiring to walk with the Lord as Elijah walked with the Lord. Without going too deep into the subject, because we would have to read a lot more in order to learn about these two men, and I would encourage everyone to read all the book of 2 Kings if you're interested in learning more. This event of God taking one of his servants into heaven without dying first, taking him up bodily, is only the second time in the Bible where a person was called up to heaven without death. As we learned in our first video, when we discussed Enoch, who was the first man taken up, and we said that Enoch is the picture of the rapture event. It's the foreshadow of the rapture. When you compare the two, when Enoch was taken up, there were no witnesses. Only God was the witness to that event. The people who knew Enoch discovered he was missing or gone and wondered where he went, but nobody physically saw him leave. In the case of Elijah, there were witnesses, many witnesses. You had the 50 prophets who stood afar off and watched the events happen. You had Elisha, who was with Elijah when he was taken up, who witnessed the event happen. And as we will soon learn in this study, Elijah's event points to the two witnesses. Enoch's event pointed toward the rapture. So these were foreshadowing events. Patterns, if you want to say. So we're fixing to go into learn about the two witnesses now, and then afterwards we'll compare the two. And then we're going to conclude with a study I had read last night that extends on the journey that Elijah and Elisha took and how it also relates to the two witnesses. Hopefully we can get this done within one video. So we're going to now continue. We're going to go to Revelation 11. Now this is speaking of the two witnesses. And we're going to start in Revelation 1 through 12. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood. This is reading out of the King James Version, by the way. So let's start again, King James Version. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall be tread under foot 42 months. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks, standing before the God of the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth and devour their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them and kill them. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put into graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these 2 prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. And after 3 days and a half, the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood up. And they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. So that is reading out of Revelation chapter 11, verses 1 through 12. Now, some may ask, well, how does Elijah foreshadow the 2 witnesses, since Elijah was taken up alive to heaven without seeing death, and the 2 witnesses were first killed, and 3.5 days later, the Spirit of life entered back into them. They raised to their feet, and God took them up into the cloud, up into heaven. How does this foreshadow? Because 2 had to die, but 1 lived and didn't see death. Well, if you understand that Elijah, being a prophet, and the two witnesses, which, by the way, are quite honestly the returning of Elijah, because the Bible does later on speak of these 2 witnesses and go into more detail. These 2 prophets that God sends to Jerusalem during the last days are two men who had previously lived before in history, that are sent back to the earth to prophesy for these 3.5 years to the people of Israel, trying to call them to the Lord. One may be Enoch, as some have said. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that it's Elijah and Moses, and there's good reason for it. That's a different study, though. So God gave Elijah power over the waters, as we saw when he smote, or he hit with his cloak, the waters of the river Jordan, and it split in 2, and they walked over on dry land. And again, there's a reference in Revelation, where the prophets will have power over the water. There's also, if you read in it's in 1 Kings 18 through 25. We also read another similarity, that Elijah in the Old Testament had power over fire that God gave him. And then the two witnesses also have breathed fire out of their mouths. And if anyone should try to hurt them, then those men or women will be burned up with fire. So we're going to read out of 1 Kings 18, and this is 18:25 through 40. Reading out the New International Version. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, and do not light the fire." So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal. "From morning till noon, Baal answer us," they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. "Shout louder," he said. "Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come here to me." They came to him, and he replied, "The altar of the Lord which had been torn down." And they came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it large enough to hold 2 bags of seed. And he arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, "Fill 4 large jars of water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." "Do it again," he says. They did it again. "Do it a third time," he ordered, and they did it the third time. The water ran down around the altar, even filled the trench. At the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Then the fire of the Lord fell and burnt up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" Then Elijah commanded them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away." they seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to Kishon, to the Kishon Valley, and slaughtered there. So we read that there's an association with fire with Elijah. There was also an association with fire with Elijah during his ministry when he lived over 2,000 years ago, or nearly 2,000 years ago. So we know that, at least we are positive that Elijah is going to be one of the two witnesses that God sends to Jerusalem in the last days. So the first time Elijah was taken up, he was taken up bodily without seeing death. Second time he's taken up, but he does see death. He is killed by the beast of Revelation, which is the Antichrist. And then then the Spirit of God is breathed back into his body, enters back into his body, along with the other prophet. They stand back up on their feet, and then God calls them up to heaven. So when we look at the first event with Elijah, it does point to the second event that also Elijah will be part of. Why is this important? Well, I'm doing this study because a lot of teaching will teach that Enoch points to the rapture of the church, that Elijah is a picture of the rapture of the church, and that Noah is a picture of a rapture of the church. But I do believe that they all three do foreshadow an event, but they don't all foreshadow the rapture of the church. They do foreshadow one another, but it's three separate events, three separate groups of people that the Lord is calling. And so this is why we're doing this study now. I do encourage everyone to read all the verses. We're going to also read out of 2 Kings 1:10, chapter 1, verses 10 through 13. It also is another example of how Elijah and fire is associated. So let's go on and read that real quick. Read now the New International Version, 2 Kings chapter 1, verses 10 through 13. Elijah answered the captain, "If I am a man of God, may fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50 men." Then fire fell from heaven and consumed the captain and his men. At this, the king sent Elijah another captain with his 50 men. The captain said to him, "Man of God, this is what the king says. Come down at once." "If I'm a man of God," Elijah replied, "may fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50 men." Then the fire of God fell from heaven and consumed him and his 50 men. So the king sent a third captain with his 50 men. This third captain went up and fell on his knees before Elijah. "Man of God," he begged, "please have respect for my life and the lives of these 50 men, your servants." So again, we read how Elijah can pray or ask God to send fire down from heaven, and God hears him, and he answers by responding with fire being sent from heaven. Same as Elijah or the two witnesses have the power given to them to breathe fire from their mouths and consume those who may try to hurt them during the tribulation period. So as we are demonstrating, the first event with Elijah being taken up to heaven is witnessed. It's a witness event. It's not like the rapture. The rapture was very quick. No one, people do realize people are missing, but they don't actually see the event happen. They don't actually physically see the catching away. They know people are missing. So it's like a witness and not a witness. It's like people be talking to their friends or their family who are Christians, and then all of a sudden their Christian friends and families are just gone. It's not a slow process. It's just gone. It's like, I know he's just standing here, and then he's not standing there. That's a rapture event. Very quick, twinkling of an eye type of event, quicker than a blink of an eye. That's just how quick that is. In Elijah's case, in both events, are witnessed by men. The first time, there was 51. So you had 50 prophets, plus the disciple of Elijah witnessed Elijah going up in heaven by a whirlwind the first time. The second event, all of Israel, really you can say all of the world sees the event happen. They see these men come back to life who had been dead for 3.5 days, lying in the street, and the people were celebrating because of all the plagues and judgments that these two witnesses had performed while they were prophesying during their 3.5-year ministry. The breath of life comes back into them. God tells them to come up hither, and they're called up into heaven bodily. But they did see death. They did see death the second time. First time, Elijah did not see death. Second time, he was killed by the killed by the Antichrist, along with the other prophet. And then he was resurrected and called up into heaven in the sight of his enemies. In the sight of God's enemies, this event happened. So it's a slower event. I mean, it's slow enough where people actually see them go up. That's why I say that the first Elijah event and the two witnesses, Elijah is a foreshadow event for the two witnesses, not for the rapture. But the two witness event is the confirmation of what happened before the tribulation began, when the church was taken up. Because when the church is taken up, surely there are going to be efforts made there are going to be efforts made to convince the world that what happened wasn't God taking the Christians away, but aliens or something like that. We don't know what method exactly they're going to use to explain it away, but it's going to be explained away well enough where the people will accept it. When the two witnesses are called up, when their bodies are resurrected and they stand before men alive again and then called up into heaven, there will be some people that will probably look back on what happened to their friends and families before the tribulation began. And they say, hey, they weren't taken up by aliens. They were taken up by God. I mean, put yourself in the shoes. If you were present watching the two witnesses come back to life and be taken up, and you had somebody during the rapture that was called up, but you were told that something else took them up besides God. If you were any reasonable or rational person, you would say, hey, wait a minute. this seems awful familiar. We just saw these two witnesses be called up, and there was no aliens around. There was no, whatever the excuse that might be used in the future, whatever explanation is given for the rapture. Well, none of that happened with these two witnesses. We saw with our own eyes these two men come back to life who were dead and be called up into heaven. Whereas our families and friends, a while back ago, they just all vanished, and we were told that something else took them up. Well, you begin to put it all together and say, wait a minute, both of these were a God event. It wasn't aliens, it was God that took these people up. And everything that the Christians told us about the rapture was true. That's just a rational way of putting it all together. It's a logical way of putting it all together. Because you saw it with your own eyes. And if someone says, oh, you didn't see that, it really happened this way, then those people who won't believe their own eyes, and they're foolish men, foolish women, not willing to accept truth when they see it happen right before their eyes. I have some other notes here that I wrote down. I'm going to read them briefly. Just some notes I was taking when I was doing this, putting this study together. Elijah, foreshadow of two witnesses being called up, confirmation of the rapture also. We kind of just covered this, 2 Kings, 2 verses 1 through 11. My thoughts, Spirit of the Lord had taken him. Elijah's departure was seen by 51 witnesses. In Revelation, when I was studying Revelation 11, 1 through 12, two witnesses ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. There were many witnesses. Just as with Elijah being called up and witnessed by men, the two witnesses ascended up into heaven. The two witnesses ascending up to heaven is witnessed by the world, giving us the idea that these two catching up events happen slowly, unlike the rapture, which happened very quick, in the twinkling of an eye. We're going to conclude this because I was reading a study that I did not write, by the way. I did not write this study. I was doing some